Representative Ocasio-Cortez, allow me to inquire regarding your property acquisition on June 15, 2025. On that day, you and your partner Riley Roberts bought a mansion worth $4.2 million in Wesley Heights, known as one of D.C.'s most elite areas. You paid entirely in cash without a mortgage, delivering $4.2 million in funds. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino's voice resonated throughout the House Ethics Committee chamber. He was not yelling or acting theatrically, but simply delivering facts with the steady tone of a veteran officer who knows he has cornered a suspect, making every syllable land with heavy impact. He hesitated for a moment to let that figure settle in the room. Your annual salary as a member of Congress is set at $174,000. You have served in Congress for 6 years now. Even if you had preserved every single cent, which you certainly did not, you would possess slightly more than $1 million. Therefore, I am posing a very straightforward query to you. From where did the remaining $3 million originate? Absolute silence, heavy and suffocating, filled the room. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat at the testimony table, flanked by 3 high-priced attorneys in bespoke suits. The irony of the scene was lost on nobody present. The Democratic Socialist representative, who had constructed her entire image on battling wealthy elites, was now surrounded by legal counsel who likely billed more per hour than most of her voters earned in a full day. It was November 3, 2025, during a closed session of the House Ethics Committee deep within the Capitol basement. Although technically barred to the press and public, the proceedings were being recorded for the official archives. The room was filled to capacity, with every committee member in attendance and staff lining the perimeter while stenographers transcribed every utterance. Everyone understood that a significant event was on the verge of breaking. AOC was dressed in a burgundy blazer over a black shirt, wearing gold hoop earrings and her trademark bold red lipstick. This was the carefully curated aesthetic of the working-class congresswoman from the Bronx, designed to look relatable, authentic, and like a woman of the people. She had transformed that specific look into a brand valued in the millions, resulting in magazine covers, fashion blog articles, and viral social media interactions. However, sitting opposite Dan Bongino and his binders packed with financial documentation, she did not appear nearly as self-assured. Tension was visible in her jawline, and her hands clutched the side of the table. Her eyes repeatedly darted toward her attorneys, seeking guidance that was not arriving. She had assumed this hearing concerned the Met Gala dress scandal from the previous year. That was the tax the rich gown she had worn, which had provoked conservatives so effectively. That was old news, easily defended, and already debated endlessly on Twitter. She had no suspicion that she was about to face a 14-month FBI financial inquiry revealing she had become a multi-millionaire by exploiting the working-class followers she claimed to serve. Bongino sat calmly at the witness table, a former NYPD officer and Secret Service agent who had guarded presidents before becoming the current deputy director of the FBI. He appeared exactly as he was, a man who had spent decades tracking money trails and constructing cases against lawbreakers. Beside him sat Special Agent Jennifer Martinez from the Financial Crimes Unit, with her laptop open and prepared to display any document required. In front of Bongino rested 2 heavy binders bearing official FBI stamps. He had spent the morning examining every single page one last time. These contained bank records, wire transfer proofs, LLC formation documents, tax returns, real estate deeds, and photos of mansions and designer dresses. This was 14 months of investigation refined into hard evidence that could not be spun. AOC attempted to respond to his query regarding the mansion, but her voice sounded defensive and almost scripted. She claimed her finances were private and called this harassment of a woman of color who dared to challenge the establishment. Your financial situation became a matter of public interest, Bongino interjected smoothly. When you purchased a mansion you could not possibly afford on a government wage while claiming to stand for working people, you made it public. Allow me to demonstrate exactly where the funds originated. He retrieved bank statements and slid copies across the table to every committee member with a rehearsed movement. The noise of paper gliding across the polished wood was the only sound audible in the chamber. There were 3 wire transfers, all occurring within 1 week of your property acquisition. He gestured to the highlighted financial transactions. On June 8th, $1.2 million arrived from an LLC named Progressive Future Fund, registered in Delaware with no listed donors. On June 10th, $1.5 million came from Grassroots Action Network, another Delaware LLC with no disclosed donors. On June 12th, another $1.5 million arrived from Democratic Advancement Coalition, which is, as you guessed, a Delaware LLC with no disclosed donors. He looked up from the papers and let his gaze lock with hers. These are not grassroots contributions from working individuals donating $15 because they believe in your cause. These are dark money instruments, shell companies created to conceal the source of the funding. We traced them, and although it took us months, we followed every single dollar. They all lead back to the identical location. He paused, forcing her to wait for the revelation. It is George Soros-linked progressive donor networks. Billionaire capital funneled through these shell entities into your personal LLC to purchase a mansion for you. The room buzzed with murmurs and people shifting in their chairs. This situation was far larger than anybody had anticipated. Bongino was not finished, so he clicked a remote, and an image materialized on the screen at the front of the room. It was a flowchart displaying money moving through various organizations, with every connection traced by a colored line. "Let me guide you through this process," he stated, standing and walking toward the display. "Start right here at the top with Open Society Foundations, which is George Soros's primary vehicle. Money flows from that point to the Democracy Alliance, which is the coordination network where billionaire progressive donors determine whom to fund and how much. From the Democracy Alliance, the funds split into the 3 Delaware LLCs I previously mentioned. From all 3 of those entities, within the same week in June, the cash flows to your private LLC. $1.2 million, $1.5 million, and another $1.5 million, totaling exactly $4.2 million, the precise cost of your mansion." He turned back to confront her directly. "You have constructed your entire political identity on battling billionaires, attacking dark money in politics, and claiming to represent the working class against the elite. However, you have been purchased by the billionaires you claim to resist. You have accepted their dark money, the very same dark money you spend every day on Twitter denouncing, to buy yourself a mansion in one of America's richest neighborhoods." AOC began to protest, but Bongino lifted his hand slightly. "That is merely the mansion, which is just where we are beginning. Let me demonstrate the rest of it. There is the boyfriend receiving $1.6 million in campaign consulting fees for labor nobody can verify. There are the $35,000 Met Gala tickets that breached gift regulations. There is the $150,000 in designer clothing you wore and never disclosed. There is the book deal arranged by Soros-funded publishers. This is a luxury lifestyle financed by working-class supporters who genuinely believe you are one of them." He opened his first binder with a purposeful movement. The noise of the spine cracking appeared loud in the quiet room. Let me demonstrate to this committee precisely how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez transformed democratic socialism into a scheme for personal enrichment. With those words, he commenced laying out a case that would demolish everything Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had established. The meticulously crafted persona of the democratic socialist bartender from the Bronx was about to be exposed as the greatest fraud in modern progressive politics. To comprehend how we arrived here, and how the working-class hero ended up possessing a $4 million mansion purchased with billionaire funds, you must go back 12 hours earlier. That was when she walked into her office, believing this was just another Republican harassment session she could navigate via Twitter. 12 hours prior, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat in her congressional office examining the subpoena that had been delivered by courier the week before. The document was irritatingly vague. It was a subpoena to testify before the House Committee on Ethics regarding financial irregularities and potential rule violations. That was the extent of it, offering no specifics or details, just a date and location with a warning about contempt charges. Her communications director, Saikat Chakrabarti, sat opposite her scrolling through his tablet. He had been with her since the start, recruiting her back in 2017 and managing her shocking primary victory. He looked up from his screen with a wave of dismissal. He insisted they were fishing and that this was about the Met Gala dress from the previous year. He claimed Republicans were still angry about the tax the rich slogan and wanted to manufacture an ethics violation. AOC nodded while scrolling through Twitter on her phone. The mentions were supportive as usual, with her army of followers already defending her against a hearing that had not even occurred. She noted that they had already explained the dress was loaned and the ticket was work-related. She insisted this was simply more harassment because she was effective at her job. Her phone rang with Mark Elias joining the conversation via speakerphone. His voice carried the confidence of a lawyer who cost $1,500 an hour to retain. He suggested the vague subpoena indicated a fishing expedition, possibly about late campaign finance filings, but nothing criminal. He asked how she wished to approach the situation. Elias had a ready answer, suggesting simple messaging that she was a working-class woman of color threatening the establishment. He advised arguing that every attack was proof of her effectiveness and that Republicans were terrified because she fought for people rather than corporations. He framed it as political persecution disguised as oversight. Saikat pulled up polling data to show her approval ratings were high, and her Twitter following had reached 13.2 million. He argued this hearing would only make her more famous and make the Republicans look petty. AOC felt her confidence return, knowing she had survived everything thrown at her over 6 years. Trump had called her a communist, and Fox News covered her constantly, yet every attack made her more popular. She had mastered the playbook of claiming victim status and rallying her online following. She knew how to turn any controversy into a fundraising opportunity within 48 hours. She wondered why this time would be any different. What AOC did not know was that this was not a political attack, but an FBI financial crimes investigation. For 14 months, Special Agent Jennifer Martinez and her team had been quietly tracking money trails. They had subpoenaed bank records, traced wire transfers, and examined LLC documents in Delaware. They were building a case brick by brick, like prosecutors who know they only get one chance. They had found something massive that could not be explained away with a tweet. At that exact moment, 3,000 miles away in Quantico, Dan Bongino was running through final preparations with his team. The secure conference room walls were covered with flowcharts, photos of the mansion, and screenshots of designer gowns. Bank statements with highlighted transactions covered every available surface, visualizing systematic financial fraud. Bongino was 51 years old and still built like the protector of presidents he used to be. He had grown up in Queens and knew what real public service looked like. Special Agent Martinez stood at a whiteboard covered in financial calculations. She was 45 and had spent her adult life following money, first at the SEC and then for 15 years at the FBI. She stated that this case was among the most brazen she had ever built. It involved a sitting member of Congress enriching herself by millions while preaching about fighting for the poor. Martinez clicked through slides showing the timeline of the 14-month investigation. She displayed a chart showing net worth over time, which was flat from 2019 to 2021 before shooting upward sharply in 2022. When she entered Congress, her net worth was approximately $7,000 with student loan debt. Today, based on documented assets, her net worth is approximately $4.8 million. Bongino looked at the graph and noted the vertical climb was absurd on a congressional salary. Even saving every penny for 6 years would only yield $1 million, leaving $3.8 million unaccounted for. Martinez explained they had identified multiple revenue streams, starting with the boyfriend angle. Riley Roberts runs a company called Digital Outreach Strategies that received $1.6 million from PACs aligned with AOC. We examined the work extensively and interviewed people under oath. We found absolutely nothing, including no websites or campaigns attributed to him. When pressed, the PAC officials were vague and could produce no documents showing his work. Martinez nodded, calling it a classic corruption scheme where you hire a partner's company to funnel donor money into household income. She moved to the next section regarding the book deal and speaking fees. Her book earned about $800,000 in royalties, but the publisher is partially owned by a firm with Soros-linked donors. Bulk purchases totaling hundreds of thousands were made by the same PACs that employ her boyfriend. These were not real sales to readers, but a mechanism to funnel money through inflated royalties. Martinez clicked to the main event, identifying 3 Delaware LLCs that transferred $4.2 million to AOC's personal accounts in June 2025. She brought up the money flow diagram tracing these back to the Democracy Alliance. This network coordinates billionaire progressive donors like George Soros and Tom Steyer. The alliance funds these shell LLCs to move money to politicians while hiding the source. Bank records showed 3 wire transfers to Bronx Future Holdings, an LLC owned by AOC and Roberts. 1 week later, that LLC purchased a mansion for $4.2 million in cash. Bongino studied the photos of the upscale estate and confirmed she was being funded by the billionaires she claimed to fight. Martinez confirmed this showed in her voting record, which aligned 100% with Soros's positions on immigration and criminal justice. She is not an independent voice but a paid spokesperson voting as her funders desire. Special Agent Wilson then pulled up the category of unreported gifts. The Met Gala ticket alone cost $35,000, and the custom dress was valued at $12,000. House rules clearly state gifts over $390 must be declined or reimbursed, and she did neither. We documented appearances at major events over 3 years wearing designer gowns totaling over $150,000. Martinez added the final category of campaign fund conversion, noting personal expenses charged to campaign accounts. We estimate at least $200,000 in personal expenses were illegally charged over 4 years. Bongino leaned back to process the boyfriend's payments, the book deal, the mansion money, the gifts, and the misuse of funds. Wilson pointed out the hypocrisy by showing her tweets condemning billionaires next to evidence of her taking their money. One tweet rejected billionaire money, while a bank transfer showed $1.2 million from a Soros fund. Another tweet attacked dark money, while records showed 4.2 million coming from dark money vehicles. Bongino asked how to present this to maximize impact. Martinez suggested starting with the mansion because it is the one thing she absolutely cannot explain. Then we show the dark money trail to destroy her grassroots brand visually. Next, we reveal the boyfriend scheme and the luxury lifestyle to show corruption. Finally, we hit her with the tax returns, showing her income does not match her assets. Bongino considered her likely defense of calling it sexist or racist. Martinez insisted they should let her use that playbook because the math does not care about identity politics. Wilson added that while the media would try to protect her, releasing the evidence publicly would make defense impossible. Bongino stood up to gather his materials, noting that AOC had spent 6 years building a false brand. She saw an opportunity in progressive politics to get rich rather than help her constituents. He picked up the binder with the mansion photos and said it was time to show Congress what their star had really been doing. At 1:30 that afternoon, AOC's motorcade arrived at the Capitol, where she stepped out looking camera-ready. She walked to the basement hearing rooms with her team, noticing a heavier security presence than usual. At 1:55, she entered the room and immediately felt the atmosphere was wrong. The committee members looked serious, and she saw Dan Bongino sitting there with his thick binders. Something cold settled in her stomach as she realized this was not about a dress. At exactly 2 o'clock, Chairman Michael Guest called the hearing to order to examine potential violations of federal law. He stated that the FBI had been conducting a financial investigation for 14 months and asked Deputy Director Bongino to proceed. Bongino stood and looked at AOC with a steady gaze. He told her she had built a career on a narrative of being a working-class fighter against billionaires. He paused to let the weight of his next words hang in the air. "I am here to show that every bit of that is a lie, and that you have enriched yourself massively. You are funded by the exact billionaires you claim to oppose and have violated multiple laws." He opened his first binder and said they would start with her mansion. AOC's confidence faltered as everyone watched. Bongino slid a photo across the table showing the property she purchased on June 15th. He clicked his remote to display the stunning brick mansion on the screen. He described the 1,800 square feet, the gourmet kitchen, the wine cellar, and the home theater. He noted that the home is in Wesley Heights, where the median price is over $3 million and neighbors are wealthy elites. This is not a working-class neighborhood, but where the wealthy live. He produced the purchase documents showing the buyer was Bronx Future Holdings. He pointed out the LLC was registered in Delaware and that she paid $4.2 million in cash. He then performed the math on her salary, showing that even with zero expenses, she could save only $1.16 million in 6 years. You bought a house for $4.2 million, leaving $3 million unaccounted for. He looked directly at her and asked where that money came from. Silence stretched out for 20 seconds before he answered for her. He showed the bank records for Bronx Future Holdings, which was opened in May with a zero balance. In 1 week, it received 3 large transfers totaling exactly $4.2 million. He identified the senders as 3 Delaware LLCs with names like Progressive Future Fund. 3 days after the final transfer, her LLC bought the house. Representative Virginia Fox asked who was behind these LLCs. Bongino clicked his remote to reveal the complex flowchart connecting the organizations. He explained that Delaware allows shell companies to hide donors. He traced the money back to the Democracy Alliance, a donor network funded by George Soros. He showed documents proving the alliance funded the 3 shell LLCs. Representative Jamie Raskin asked if this meant she received $5 million from Soros. Bongino confirmed it was approximately $5 million documented so far. The room erupted in murmurs, while AOC sat frozen. The money went to her personal LLC to buy a mansion, not to her campaign. He then moved to the topic of Riley Roberts and his company. He asked AOC what the company did, but her lawyer intervened. Bongino proceeded to show that the company was incorporated 1 month after her second term began. It had no website, no social media, and no employees other than Roberts. The only clients were PACs aligned with AOC, such as Justice Democrats. He showed payment records totaling $1.6 million over 4 years. He noted that under oath, PAC officials could not identify any specific work Roberts had done. Martinez read from deposition transcripts where directors admitted the consultation was informal. Not a single person could produce a report or email showing his work. Bongino added that Roberts had no experience in political campaigning before his girlfriend took office. The only logical explanation is that he is being paid because of his relationship. Representative James Comer identified this as a classic pay-to-play scheme. Martinez noted that Roberts reported a 90% profit margin, meaning he had virtually no business costs. Bongino then showed the full scope of the funding network on a massive flowchart. He traced the path from Soros and other billionaires down to AOC. Internal documents identified her as a top-tier priority for the Democracy Alliance. The alliance created a funding ecosystem to enrich her while maintaining the appearance of grassroots support. Bongino estimated that Soros-linked organizations had spent $8.2 million supporting her over 6 years. This included the mansion money, the payments to her boyfriend, and the bulk book purchases. He asked why billionaires would fund a socialist who claims to hate them. He clicked to a voting record analysis showing she votes exactly how they want her to. On immigration, law enforcement, and energy policy, her record is in 100% alignment with Soros's agenda. He told her she is not an independent voice, but a paid spokesperson. AOC stood up and shouted that this was outrageous, and she voted her conscience. Bongino cut her off, asking why she took their money if that were true. He displayed her tweet condemning billionaire money next to the record of her receiving it. He then moved to the Met Gala incident. He reminded her of the Tax the Rich dress and showed the financial breakdown. The total value of the night was $50,000, well above the $390 gift limit. He refuted her claim that it was work-related, citing the ethics manual. He then revealed that after she wore the dress, Soros-funded organizations bought $280,000 worth of the designer's products. This appeared to be a money laundering scheme where everyone profited except the taxpayers. He showed photos of her at other events wearing designer gowns totaling $152,000 over 3 years. She had reported none of these gifts. Representative Susan Wild asked if she perhaps misunderstood the rules. Bongino replied that she understood perfectly, but chose to ignore them to live like a celebrity. He then moved to her tax returns. He showed that her reported income and savings could not support her lifestyle. Her calculated savings of roughly $650,000 could not explain a $4.2 million mansion and luxury travel. He stated there were only 2 explanations: tax evasion or money laundering. He concluded by showing a split screen of her tweets versus her actions. Her words about fighting the elite were displayed next to photos of her living as one of them. He stated that she had defrauded the voters who believed she represented them. He concluded his presentation, leaving the room in stunned silence. Chairman Guest asked AOC for her response. She stammered that this was a politically motivated attack on a woman of color. Guest cut her off, pointing out that $4.2 million in bank records is financial evidence, not politics. He asked her to explain how buying a mansion constituted movement building. When she failed to answer, Representative Raskin tried to help by suggesting it might be for a foundation. Bongino revealed the LLC had only one transaction in its history: buying the house. AOC looked trapped and claimed she did not have to justify her finances. Guest firmly reminded her that as a member of Congress, she absolutely did. Mark Elias intervened, stating they were approaching issues involving her Fifth Amendment rights. The room erupted as the implication of silence became clear. Bongino asked specific yes or no questions about the money and the mansion. To each question, Elias responded that his client declined to answer. Bongino noted that answering truthfully would incriminate her. AOC broke down, claiming she was being destroyed because she fought for people. Representative Comer quietly corrected her, stating she was being investigated because she bought a mansion she could not afford. The fight drained out of her as the reality set in. Chairman Guest announced the committee would vote on immediate referrals to the DOJ and IRS. He suspended her from committee duties and adjourned the hearing. Leaks started within the hour, and by evening, it was the only story in the media. The contrast between the tax the rich dress and the mansion photo was devastating. The Justice Department moved quickly, and an indictment was issued in January 2026. The trial began in April, where the evidence from the hearing became public. The jury convicted her on 7 counts, and Roberts on all 4. In August 2026, the judge sentenced AOC to 6 years in federal prison and Roberts to 3. He admonished her for betraying the trust of the working people she claimed to represent. The House voted to expel her, and a moderate Democrat won her seat in a special election. The squad fractured, and the progressive movement was left reeling. AOC entered prison in October 2026, and her social media presence vanished. The lesson echoed through politics. You cannot personally enrich yourself while claiming to fight the wealthy. Eventually, someone will check the bank records, and the math will not add up. AOC had thought her brand and identity would protect her, but she was wrong. The FBI had receipts that could not be tweeted away. She went to prison not because of who she was, but because she committed crimes and became the biggest fraud in progressive politics.